Hospitals, places of healing, comfort, and hope. Or so we're told. What if I told you some hospitals were the opposite, places of fear, despair, and terror? We expect skilled hands and compassionate hearts, but sometimes the cure is worse than the disease. These are the stories of those who walked into the light of a hospital, only to be swallowed by the shadows lurking within. Step inside if you dare. Feel the chill run down your spine as you cross the threshold of a place where hope goes to die. The air is thick with antiseptic, a sterile attempt to mask the stench of fear that clings to every surface. Listen closely. Can you hear the faint echoes of muffled screams? Each room holds a story, a terrifying tale of pain, neglect, and unimaginable horror. We'll delve into the abyss of neglect, where patients are forgotten, ignored, and left to suffer. Some hospitals harbour secrets, dark entities trapped within their walls, their presence a constant reminder of the suffering endured within. We place our lives in the hands of strangers in white coats armed with scalpels and syringes. We trust them. But what happens when that trust is shattered? Medical malpractice, a wrong dosage, a missed diagnosis, a slip of the scalpel. Seemingly small errors, yet their consequences can be catastrophic. Imagine the cold dread that grips your heart as you realize something is wrong. The doctor reassures you, but the doubt lingers, and then it hits you, the horrifying realization that the cure has become the curse. The hospital, once a beacon of hope, transforms into a prison of pain and fear. The doctor's words echo in your ears, their promises of healing now hollow and empty. The pain meds offer no escape, only a fog that obscures the terrifying reality of your situation. You're at the mercy of strangers, their every decision holding the power to heal or to harm. Days turn into nights, the sterile smell of the hospital room your constant companion. The beeping of machines becomes a morbid soundtrack to your growing fear. The trust you once had, the blind faith in the medical profession, crumbles under the weight of doubt. You are no longer just a patient, you are a victim. The hospital, once a sanctuary, transforms into a battleground where you must fight for your health, your sanity, and your very life. Stories of medical malpractice are not mere ghost stories shared to evoke fear. They are real-life horrors, etched into the annals of medical history. Cases where a misplaced decimal point on a prescription turns a life-saving drug into a lethal injection. Surgery suites, designed to be sterile havens of healing, become stages for unimaginable tragedies. Instruments meant to mend, instead inflict irreversible damage. The aftermath of these mistakes is a chilling testament to the fragility of human life and the devastating consequences of human error. Families torn apart by grief and anger. These stories serve as a stark reminder that hospitals, for all their advancements in technology, are still run by fallible human beings. Beyond the sharp instruments and potent medications lies a more insidious threat, a silent scourge that haunts the corridors of some hospitals. It's not a ghost or a phantom, but something far more real, far more terrifying: neglect. Imagine being wheeled into a cold, sterile room, your body racked with pain, your mind clouded with fear. You're alone, vulnerable, completely dependent on the kindness of strangers, but the strangers never seem to come. The call button becomes your lifeline, a desperate plea for help that often goes unanswered. The minutes stretch into hours, each tick of the clock amplifying your suffering. The pain medication so desperately needed arrives late, if at all. You are invisible, forgotten, lost in the vast labyrinth of the hospital system. The hospital, once a symbol of hope, now feels like a prison. The walls seem to close in, suffocating you with their sterile indifference. Days bleed into nights, the only variation in the endless cycle of pain and loneliness, the occasional flicker of the fluorescent lights. You lose track of how long you've been here, how long you've been trapped in this nightmare. The faces of doctors and nurses, once a source of comfort, become interchangeable, their features lost in a sea of scrubs and stethoscopes. Your humanity, your individuality is stripped away, replaced by a cold clinical detachment. Neglect in a hospital setting isn't always about malice or intent. Sometimes it's simply a byproduct of a system stretched thin, of overworked staff and understaffed wards. But for the patient lying helpless in a hospital bed, the reason for the neglect matters little. The consequences of neglect can be just as devastating as any surgical error or misdiagnosis. Bed sores, infections, dehydration, malnutrition. These are the silent killers that thrive in the shadows of indifference. But the most insidious effect of neglect is the erosion of trust. When patients feel ignored, unheard and uncared for, their faith in the medical profession crumbles. The hospital, instead of a place of healing, becomes a source of trauma and anxiety. But there are other hospitals, shrouded in a different kind of fear. Hospitals where the horrors linger long after the lights dim and the last visitors leave. Hospitals where the very walls seem to whisper tales of suffering, where the air is thick with the chilling presence of the unseen. These are the haunted hospitals, places where the veil between our world and the next grows thin, where the echoes of pain and fear reverberate through the decades. Hospitals built on ancient burial grounds, their foundations steeped in the energy of countless lost souls. Walk down these corridors if you dare, and feel the temperature drop, a bone-chilling cold that seeps into your bones. Patients speak in hushed tones of apparitions appearing at the foot of their beds, shadowy figures that vanish as quickly as they materialize. Nurses on the night shift recount tales of gurneys moving on their own, their wheels squeaking down empty corridors, a chilling symphony of the unseen. Medical equipment malfunctions without explanation, vital signs plummet without reason, and the air crackles with an unseen energy that defies logical explanation. Is it faulty wiring, stress-induced hallucinations, or something more sinister? Something that lingers in the shadows, feeding on the fear and pain that permeate these hallowed halls. These hospitals become more than just places of healing. They become repositories of fear, their very names whispered in hushed tones. The operating room, that sterile theatre where life hangs in the balance, holds a particular allure for the paranormal. Here, under the harsh glare of surgical lights, amidst the beeping of machines and the hurried whispers of surgeons, the boundary between the living and the dead seems to blur. The air thrums with the residual energy of countless surgeries, some successful, some not, the echoes of pain and fear clinging to the stainless steel and tile. Stories abound of surgical instruments moving on their own, of scalpels clattering to the floor with no explanation, of ghostly surgeons peering over the shoulders of their living counterparts. Some whisper of the operation room phantom, a malevolent entity said to sabotage surgeries, its unseen presence felt in the sudden drop in a patient's vital signs. The stories we're about to uncover aren't mere campfire tales. They're real, painfully real. They're whispers from the ward, chilling accounts from those who have stared into the abyss of hospital horror. There's the story of a young woman admitted for a routine procedure. As she lay in her recovery room, she felt an icy hand grip her arm. Opening her eyes, she saw an old woman in a tattered hospital gown. her eyes filled with a sorrow that transcended this world. Before she could scream, the figure vanished. The nurses dismissed her claims as medication-induced hallucinations, but the young woman knew what she saw. The terror of that night, the feeling of an unseen presence, stayed with her long after her physical wounds healed. One story in particular stands out. The story of Mercy Hospital, a sprawling complex with a dark past. It's said that the hospital was built on the site of an old asylum, its very foundation stained with the anguish of those who suffered within its walls. Over the years, patients and staff alike reported strange occurrences, flickering lights, disembodied voices, and the overwhelming sensation of being watched. But the most terrifying reports centered around the ghost of Dr. Henry Blackwood, a brilliant but troubled surgeon who met an untimely end within the hospital walls. Dr. Blackwood was known for his groundbreaking surgical techniques, but his methods were often unorthodox, pushing the boundaries of medical ethics. Some whispered that he experimented on patients without their consent, driven by an insatiable thirst for knowledge and a chilling disregard for human life. One night, under mysterious circumstances, Dr. Blackwood was found dead in his operating room, a single, perfectly straight incision marking his chest. These stories, while terrifying, pale in comparison to the cold reality of medical errors. A misplaced decimal point on a prescription, a misdiagnosed illness, a surgical procedure gone wrong. These aren't the stuff of ghost stories. They're real-life horrors that plague hospitals around the world. Take the case of Sarah, a young mother admitted for a routine tonsillectomy. A mix-up in anesthesia dosages sent her into cardiac arrest on the operating table. She survived, but her life was forever altered. The hospital, once a place of hope, became a symbol of her pain, a constant reminder of the fragility of life and the devastating consequences of human error. Then there's the story of John, a grandfather misdiagnosed with a common cold when he was, in fact, suffering from a deadly infection. By the time the doctors realized their mistake, it was too late. John died, his family left to grapple with the agonizing knowledge that his death could have been prevented. Medical errors are a leading cause of death, a silent epidemic claiming countless lives each year. The stories we've uncovered are terrifying, but they also serve as a stark wake-up call. We place our trust, our very lives, in the hands of healthcare professionals. We expect them to be guardians at our bedsides, not harbingers of horror. Medical malpractice, neglect, even the unexplained and eerie. These are not just stories. They're stark reminders of the importance of awareness and vigilance in healthcare settings. We must be our own advocates, asking questions, demanding answers, and ensuring our voices are heard. Hospitals need to be held accountable for their actions. Transparency is paramount. Medical errors, when they occur, must be acknowledged, investigated, and learned from. The culture of silence that often surrounds medical mistakes only perpetuates the cycle of harm. Patients' rights are not suggestions, they are fundamental. The right to informed consent, the right to refuse treatment, the right to access your own medical records. These rights empower us to be active participants in our own healthcare, rather than passive recipients of whatever fate may befall us. This isn't about demonizing healthcare professionals. The vast majority of doctors, nurses, and medical staff are dedicated, compassionate individuals, but even the best intentions can go awry. We must demand a healthcare system that prioritizes patient safety and well-being. This is a call for awakening, a call to action. We must educate ourselves about our rights as patients. We must ask questions and demand the highest standards of care. By shedding light on the dark side of healthcare, we can create a safer, more compassionate system. As we step back from these harrowing tales, a sense of unease might linger. The sterile scent of disinfectant, the rhythmic beeping of medical machinery, these familiar aspects now carry a chilling undertone. We have peered into the abyss of medical malpractice and felt the cold grip of neglect. The instinctual reaction is to turn away, to seek solace in the belief that hospitals are places of healing. While that belief holds true for many, we cannot be lulled into a false sense of security. Vigilance and awareness are our greatest weapons against the potential for darkness. It's easy to feel powerless in the labyrinthine corridors of hospitals, but in moments of vulnerability, our strength lies. By shedding light on shadowy corners, we empower ourselves to demand better. We must move beyond the fear and embrace a proactive role in our healthcare journeys. Hospitals, for all their complexities, remain symbols of hope. Skilled professionals dedicate their lives to battling illness and injury, where technology intersects with human compassion. Even in the pursuit of healing, darkness can lurk. We must demand transparency and accountability. By working together, we can honor the sacred oath to heal and comfort. Within every hospital resides the capacity for both darkness and light. It is our responsibility to nurture the light and champion compassion.